Hey everybody, it's Alan Dietz, and this is the Kent coronavirus version of talking about sports, I guess you'd say. That's what we're calling it here at my house with the boys. We got Mike and Buck here with us, and I guess the big thing everybody, at least in the Carolinas, is talking about is Cam Newton and his departure. I'll start with you, Buck. What are your feelings?
Well, I think the one thing is Cam never got enough credit for what he did off the field. I think that MVP season also was magical. Hadn't played the same since then, and I don't know if anybody could have the kind of season that he had up to that point. Have there been some missteps on the field and things that haven't worked? I'd say yes. My concern and my biggest thing with the Panthers was they could have let him go sooner than what they did. And I think that's the biggest thing. The same respect that they paid to Ron Rivera for what he did, he was able to find a job. By the time they let Cam Newton go or even really started looking for trade options, it was too late. All the starting quarterback positions were gone. I'll say it again. He's done a lot for the community inside the line. Sometimes people talk about his body language, but all I'll say is he gave it every time I saw him play, he gave all he could. I just don't think the last few years he's been healthy, so he couldn't play at that level.
Well, I agree with you. You look at these workout videos that he's posting now, and it makes me wonder just a little bit in the sense that it's like I wish I would have seen that passion to try and come back while he was still a member of the Panthers. What do you think about it, Mike?
One thing on that, too, I don't mind seeing you working out in the weight room, but his biggest thing is throwing off his back leg and not having the quarterback mechanics. And I agree with you 100%. Spend that time, and if I see more of that video, then this next new reinvented version of Cam is going to be better because he can't be Superman anymore. He's got to be Clark.
Mike, what are your thoughts? There's a part of me that wonders if, you never had Cam Newton as the quarterback very much during the David Tepper era. And you obviously didn't with the new coach now. Do you think that maybe there was a little bit of insensitivity there from the standpoint that they just didn't really ever have much of a connection with him?
You could certainly say that. I would say this. I'm not surprised that he was released. He's up there in years now. He's been injured. There's ample reason for the Panthers, justifiably, to decide to move on. There's no problem with that. I agree with Buck. I don't think this was handled in the greatest way of all time by the Panthers. They were saying one thing, and they really meant something else.
From my perspective, I'm unbelievably excited to get a chance to work with Cam. You come in from the outside, you don't really, you kind of know as a fan, but just on a personal note, getting to know him, I mean, he is a diligent guy. He's working so hard, both in Atlanta and in Carolina, to get himself healthy. I probably won't say about anybody that they'll be a starter. I'll try to be really, especially in my first year, try to be really disciplined about not promising things to certain guys. I'll just say that I really want him on the team, and I really want him to be healthy. And I know when Cam's healthy, who he is and the type of player that he is.
When Matt Rule says up there in the press conference, I'd love to have Cam. I'd definitely love to have Cam. And, weeks later, he's out the door. We knew he was out the door. Anybody who thought he was going to be back next year is kidding themselves. And there's no problem with that. I have no problem with their decision to let him go. As I said, he's injured. We don't know what he's going to be like. As Buck said, he's working out. I don't think he's ever been out of shape. I don't think that's ever been a question. But he's 31 and beat up. We don't know what's left for him. I will say this, and I said it the other day, we can always debate who the greatest Panther of all time is. As long as there's Steve Smith, Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, we can debate who is the greatest Panther of all time. But I would say there is nobody in the history of this franchise that's ever accomplished more than Cam Newton. When Buck said, you look at the MVP season, in an era where you had Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Roethlisberger, the Mannings, he won away. He walked away 48 out of 50 votes for MVP that year. Led his team to the Super Bowl. Was clearly the best quarterback. And Buck knows this. First team All-Pro quarterback that year. That's a big deal. Winning the MVP is a big deal. But there's only one first team All-Pro every year. And he was it. And he did it in his 5th year. You know how long it took Tom Brady to get there? 8 years. You know how long it took Brett Favre? Same number, 5 years. Peyton Manning, 6 years. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment to get to that level that he did. Former Rookie of the Year. He is the passing touchdown and rushing touchdown leader in franchise history, and he's the quarterback. I mean, they can say what they want about how they feel about him as a quarterback overall, and that's fine. He has numbers that are on the negative side too. His completion percentage was never off the charts, and that's fine too if you want to go that route. But just give him his due that he is the most accomplished player in the history of this franchise. He's going to have his number retired one day up there when everything calms down and all the hard feelings are gone, because time does that. He's going to get honored there in Carolina, and he's going to have his number retired or a statue or whatever they do, because he is, if not the greatest player, he's certainly in the top 2 or 3 or 4.
Let me throw this out there real quick. I'll give you my thoughts on it. I agree with both of y'all. I don't think it was handled well at all, and I almost wonder, when Matt Rule said that he wouldn't mind working with him, if they were thinking maybe at that time of drafting a quarterback or making a play at the Heisman Trophy winner, considering that the new offensive coordinator, was with him at LSU, and maybe things changed in that philosophy. I look at it and I say, all right, Teddy Bridgewater and Cam Newton, and we already know that Teddy Bridgewater, just a couple of years ago, people didn't know if he would ever be able to play again because of his knee. I think he's a better pure passer than Cam Newton. I think he's got enough ability to scramble that he can be effective. Clearly not the runner that Cam Newton was, but my thoughts are, it's just as you said. I don't think that we have any clue about how he's going to be. Clearly, the last couple of years he struggled as the quarterback due to injuries, and you could put that on the coaching staff or on him or however you want to be. I think he's been awesome for the community. The things that he's done with children in Charlotte and in Mecklenburg County has been amazing. But
and Atlanta also, his hometown. We're back to Atlanta as well.
I don't know, and I agree with you. I think the number will be retired, and I think that you look at when Steve Smith left, it was sort of similar, not exactly like this, but it was sort of similar.
There were hurt feelings.
Yeah. I just never felt like Charlotte had the connection with Cam Newton the way that they did with Jake Delhomme. Clearly a better player, but I don't think everybody always would go back to the heart. And that Cam Newton didn't have the heart of a lot of those players that went to that first Super Bowl.
Yeah, all I'll say is this, guys. The only other guy that I've seen take as many shots and come back, and I think we take one play in the Super Bowl where he doesn't go for the football as opposed to the plays where he was running over linebackers or running through safeties or running through defensive linemen. I think that started to take its toll, just like it did with Steve McNair. But if you remember McNair, he learned how he was already a proficient passer coming out of school. He just made that better. I don't know if Cam ever spent the time necessary to do the things in that system. They made a system around him where they had RPO game, they had zone read, which is great. But at some point, you have to make throws in this league. You have to make passes in tight spaces. The thing with Teddy Bridgewater covering him in college, I saw that with Teddy. And he was able to do it in college. Before he had that catastrophic knee injury, he was on a nice trajectory. He's got a great relationship with Joe Brady. And even when Brady was gone to the New Orleans, to the LSU Tigers, they were still spending time. So this offense is going to be very similar to that now that you have Robbie Anderson, you have Samuel, you have DJ Moore, and then Christian McCaffrey. One thing about this offense I want to see different, and this isn't on Cam, it's on Christian. Christian has to give up some of those plays in the running game. They have to save him for down the stretch because I think he wants to be on the field every single time. And in his mind, at 5'10 or 5'11, 202, 205, 210, he thinks he has to play every down. They need another back to take some of the onus off of him. And I think that's the one thing, even with Cam not being able to run, didn't allow Christian McCaffrey to be as good as I think he could have been. Because if you look at that Alvin Kamara offense down in New Orleans, there's a healthy dose of a run game without Kamara. They can maximize him in the passing game and do other things. So I think with Teddy Bridgewater, we're going to see a distribution of the ball all across the field in places where it needs to be, as opposed to sometimes you didn't always see that with Cam Newton.
Now, Charles, let me ask you this now. If you don't want to see McCaffrey get the ball as much and be that guy every down, and that's fine. And I mean,
in between the tackles, here's the one thing.
No, I understand.
He's never going to change because of his size, and he's not
Right.
as big as guys. Pass protection sometimes got the quarterback. Teams will take advantage of him in that situation. So instead of making him a pass protector, get him out there, make him a safety valve. Also, short yardage sometimes, as good as he is, I know he can do this, but there needs to be another back that can take 50 to 75 of those carries away from him so he's fresh if you're going to make a run down the stretch.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest if you have to, in order to do that, you need more weapons. You need more quality weapons. And now let's see if these guys who have the potential, the DJ Moores who showed a little bit more as the season went on, let's see if Robbie Anderson is that guy that can more or less take the load off of McCaffrey. So he doesn't. If that happens, then you can do exactly what you were talking about. But until McCaffrey is your single best, not only your single best weapon, but in many cases your only weapon.
I'm going to say this. I've called games, and I'm kind of close to the team a little bit. I don't know everything that goes on in that locker room, but early on, McCaffrey didn't want to come off the field. This new staff is going to have to make him say, look, we value you in different situations. So instead of 35 touches, maybe it's 25. But those 25, you're healthy and you're ready to go. That's what I'm saying. He can't be the pushback guy like he was before because he wants to prove people wrong. He doesn't need to show anybody that he can't play every down. He's shown me he can run between the tackles, he can do all that.
You know, we know in Carolina that when the running game was the best, you had D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, or you had Jonathan Stewart and what was it, Mike, the fullback.
Mike Tobin. Yep,
and you had Cam Newton in there as well, so you really had three weapons there. Look, you see, I'm a Chiefs fan. Nobody, I don't even know if anybody knows who Damian Williams is right now. But I think going back to what you were saying, Buck, is if you look at the Chiefs and how they used their running game, and as they got better at the end of the year, where they could put Damian Williams in there or rotate between a couple of running backs who I don't even know their name. Once they took, Shady McCoy out because he was fumbling the ball, you had rookies and guys in there other than Damian Williams that I don't even know who they were. But the thing about it was they ran the ball just enough, and they had him as that drop-off guy, that safety valve, which I think Christian McCaffrey's got way more talent. He's a little back just like those guys are. And I think in a way that this is going to have to be a more pass-oriented offense than it was. But I'll also tell you that I think this is a whole sea change with the Panthers. I don't think it was an accident that after Luke Kuechly retired, you've gotten rid of Cam Newton, Olsen's gone. I think that there is a total philosophy change that they're wanting to be different at Carolina that maybe needs to be more offensive-centric than defensive-centric the way it has been with Rivera and John Fox.
And you bring up a good point about the two-headed combination at running back. I mean, you see it in New Orleans. They've had that thing going for a while. The Ravens have done it. The 49ers, I mean, the team that played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But I agree with you. I think when you trade away Trey Turner, who was a cornerstone of your offensive line, for Russell Okung, you're starting to see now that there's a different culture. So really around the analytics, it depends on what they see from their team as they bring this team together. That's the other thing. Are we going to have OTAs with the coronavirus impacting not only college football, but the NFL? I know the NFL wants to stay on the schedule, but I think it's asinine to think that if this thing goes to June or July, I hope it doesn't. I'm just saying hypothetically, that's going to impact a lot of how we do it because you don't want guys in the locker room. And it's one of those things where somebody's asymptomatic, other guys are just getting over something, and some have never had COVID-19. So that all factors in as well. Will you have an OTA for a team that's brand new to kind of figure out what your analytics are going to be?
And I think it goes back to whenever you mention analytics, I think Teddy Bridgewater is a smarter football player than Cam Newton, and I think that he is I think analytics play to his strengths, whereas I just don't think that ever played to Cam Newton's strength. I think that it was always drop back, and he got better about not running as much as he did, but I think the run was always going to be the safety valve for him, whereas now in this offense, you need a Christian McCaffrey or you need a DJ Moore to go short and dump that ball off, and I think Teddy Bridgewater will do that. I see a lot of similarities between Teddy Bridgewater and Patrick Mahomes in the sense of their mechanics. And, you know, Patrick Mahomes is not a big runner, but you look at some of those runs that he made in the playoffs, and they were huge. And if you can have the passing game and you can use McCaffrey enough to free up some space there, you know, Teddy Bridgewater is mobile enough that he can knock off, you know, 8 or 12 yards in a chunk, you know, if everybody's covered.
I like Teddy, but I don't know if he's Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I'm just saying.
And I don't know. Carolina fans better get ready for a real, I say, it may look better than it was last year, but if you're looking for him to replace a Cam Newton when Cam Newton was at his best, it's not going to happen with Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a quality quarterback. I don't know if he's shown me enough I'm ready to look at this guy as who's going to take us to the Super Bowl.
I think
this is a transition to the next phase of the Carolina Panthers and their franchise and their offense.
I think if you take Teddy Bridgewater out of Louisville, or you take Teddy Bridgewater before he hurt his knee, I think every day he could have been right there with Cam Newton. I know what you're saying, because I think last year with the Saints, he won those games, but he wasn't putting up 400 yards in most of them like Drew Brees.
I did a breakdown on him, guys, and in those later games, he won 5 straight.
Yep.
And in those games, the first game he played, he didn't come in and start. He played late, and he was rusty. But each game he played, there were throws that he made that were dig routes and opposite hash throws that were top-notch. So I'll say this. The offense is going to be designed for him because Joe Brady is going to take that same Saints principle and make the offense very similar to that, where you're going to have some bunch formation, you're going to do some things. I can see the same things that he was doing at Louisville doing here. So they're going to have to score, is what I'm saying. And that offense is going to have to, like you said earlier, Alan, it has to pass the ball a little bit more to set up the run, I think. But with that said, this offense isn't designed for a guy like Cam, who doesn't always throw on time. And not that he's not football smart, he has so much skill that sometimes he'll say, screw it, I'm going to do it in a Superman kind of way, as opposed to let me play Clark Kent and just do
if I'm beating every linebacker, I'm going to take him on, and that's what Cam would do for years. Exactly. That made sense, and there's never been a quarterback like Cam in this league. I mean, for a guy that's got to do what he did.
We talk about Lamar Jackson. We talk about – Russell Wilson is a game changer, and I knew he would be really good in the pros. I didn't know this good. But if you look at a guy that has kind of changed the way we look at quarterbacks, I say Cam Newton has to be one of those guys. Maybe he didn't win the Super Bowl, and maybe there's still some people that talk about – but if you talk about defining how the quarterback position is played from an athletic standpoint, with the ability to throw, the dual threat guy, he's taking it to another level.
Well, I'll say this, and I'll when it comes to Cam, I'll say this, and I said it the other day, look at the other recent number 1 overall draft picks at the quarterback position: Jamarcus Russell, Jameis Winston, Bradford, trying to think off the top of my head here, Stafford, and some of the other guys, Andrew Luck. You look at some of these guys, and you tell me whose career you'd rather have, those guys or Cam Newton.
Well, none of those guys were MVPs.
If you're looking for numbers.
Yeah, none of those guys were MVPs or ever went to a Super Bowl.
That's right. And none of those guys ever accomplished what Cam did. So, and I'm not saying Cam is the greatest quarterback of all time. Nobody's ever going to say that and anything like that. You can make the argument if you want that he's not even the greatest Panther, and I'm fine with that too. But
you're going to say
his accomplishments.
They're going to appreciate him when he's gone, basically is what I hear.
Oh, yeah. And unfortunately, it's going to be something like, if this season bottoms out, that's upcoming, assuming they have a season, or if it takes them a couple of years to get going, you're going to appreciate Cam then, I'll tell you that.
Do you ever think that there might have been – I remember, when they let Steve Smith go, whether it was true or not, there were some that said that the two egos couldn't exist on the same team with he and Cam Newton. It was time to move him out so Cam could take that leadership role. Do you think any of that played in this decision with Cam Newton having Christian McCaffrey there and where he's at in his career now?
I don't think so. I think it was just as Charles said before and what we just talked about. I think it's a transition into a new era of coaches and staff and philosophy. And I think it's injuries. I think, I mean, how much are you going to invest in Cam Newton with for one more year, basically, with his injury situation? At the end of the day, we still don't know how physically fit he is to play this position at the level that he does and at the production that we expect of him.
Yeah, Alan, you bring up a good point, but I think even with Steve Smith and Cam Newton, their relationship was better. I think sometimes that was manufactured. I mean, I'm sure they're egos, and both of those guys are very headstrong, but I don't know if it was as bad in the locker room as everything was outside of the locker room. I think with
Steve Smith was on the back end of was on the back end of his career as well, just like Cam. Yeah. So it was easy to make that decision as well to let him go because obviously we're going to go with Cam.
Steve was still healthy. So the problem that I saw last year and the last couple of years calling games there is that when there were opportunities to run, Cam couldn't run. And with his foot hurt and his shoulder, you got an offense kind of geared towards a RPO zone read quarterback who has the ability to move, who could not move. So I think,
or throw.
Yeah, he couldn't. I mean, if you can't run or throw and you're playing quarterback, you're at a disadvantage.
So you're running out of things for him to do.
Yeah. So, but my point again with the Panthers, I think if you're going to do this, do it sooner so he still has an opportunity to find a home. That was my key point with all of this is you knew you had to cut the $20 million or whatever it was by trade or by cut. Do that sooner because the guy did so much. You talk about culture, build a culture the way you want. Even
why do you think they did that? Why do you think it was handled this way?
I don't know. That's the part we're going to find out over the course of time. I wish I knew, but maybe they were thinking they could use him as trade bait, didn't get the trade bait that they wanted, to your point, to get a quarterback up higher this year. Or sometimes organizations will say, look, we'll stand pat with what we have, and that gives the new regime a chance to say, okay, we've got a couple of years to rebuild before we get the onus of all this negativity or things that happened before us.
You know, I still thought, though, that I thought the Panthers would get rid of him. But I'll be honest with you, when they brought Brady in from LSU, I honestly started to think that maybe the Panthers were thinking trading up to Burrow.
Yeah, I thought that, but I was worried for Cam's sake because of the way that offense is designed with Drew Brees, timing, everything in rhythm. Even though they had a spread offense, I don't know. I'm curious to see what they do in the draft. Now that they have a quarterback, maybe they'll go later for the quarterback position because there will be some guys that are available. Or is it Trevor Lawrence next year? I mean, let's not forget these fans around here. If you're a Clemson fan, everybody seems to have orange around here, even if you're a North Carolina fan. And this guy, Teddy doesn't play well. They can always look back and say, hey, we got a chance at Trevor Lawrence next year.
We're going to go a full timeout. All I got to say is it football season yet? This stuff is too good to pass up.
There's so many things that have to go right in a no-hitter.
A huge game changer.
I would have won the Powerball like 6 times.
Kevin Casey here, and this is your podcast, Talking About Sports, the Carolina Zone Sports Talk Show.
We're talking about sports on
We're talking about sports at ADSN. I don't know how to say that.
We're talking about
sports in, oh God, I forgot.
ADSN.
What is it?
ADSN.
ADSN, okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about sports.
Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports.
Talking sports.
Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports on ADSN.
Talking about sports on ADSN.
Cam Newton hasn't been picked up yet. Does that reflect on Cam? Does that justify the Panthers' decision, do you think? Does it make it, hey, we made the right decision? Look, nobody's beating down the door to get former MVP What does that tell you? Ron Rivera doesn't seem like has exactly
Well,
knocked it.
I'm not surprised by that because Dwayne Haskins is a young quarterback who has a lot of ability. Kyle Allen can come in and push him, but if you have the former NFL MVP and maybe not sure that he's healthy or not, that might be a reason why Cam is not there with the Washington Redskins, I would think. But, yeah, you bring up a good point. The problem that you look at is, well, there are too many things now gone. Brady is in Tampa. Jameis is gone. He's still looking for a home. The Colts with that situation, picking up Rivers. For me, I was thinking it was the Chargers, but maybe the Chargers are holding out the draft and see if they can get that guy, Justin Herbert, who it sounds like they want. If not, Cam Newton seems to be a good fit for the Chargers.
It's just there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, with the season itself, and there's a lot of there's just not a lot of spots for him. It doesn't seem like. However, there were only so many spots that Brady was going to go to, and all of a sudden here's Tampa Bay, and I just wonder if Cam is so upset, if Cam's mad because the Panthers gave up on him or didn't give him a chance or anything. Well, where are the other teams? Where's everybody else beating down your door? This isn't news. The Colts would not have made sprung at to get Phillip Rivers. They knew Cam was going to be gone. There's nobody that could have thought realistically that Cam was going to be here. They couldn't have waited it out to see the final decision and going after Cam, but they preferred Rivers, an older Rivers who's on the decline with his career. So I just, as much as I like Cam and I appreciate what he's done here, and like I said, Buck, I think it was handled not very well by the Panthers. Yeah. I just don't know where he's going to be next year. I really don't know.
You almost wonder if he, if it would end up working out for him, if you get into the middle of the season or something, or you get 3 or 4 weeks into the season and like Roethlisberger gets hurt at Pittsburgh. So you got, the two guys that they had last year, you got the chance to get a Cam Newton. Or is it, maybe even a deal where he goes somewhere. I don't know if he'll do this, but he may have no other choice if he wants to stay in the league than to go somewhere as a backup quarterback, or maybe even, a guy that you're going to put in on third down or on run options and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Is Cam Newton capable of being a backup with such a big personality?
That might be the one factor that's playing into a lot of GM's decisions. Can he be the backup guy?
And as strange as it is to say, Robert Griffin III is still playing. And everybody, he was beat up, but the thing is, I don't think he ever had the ego. He didn't have the time to get the ego that a Cam Newton would have as an MVP. But there's a place for Cam Newton in the league. It's just a matter of if he wants to take it or not.
It was good that they got Trey Boston back. I thought that was a good sign. That was, to me, was one of those under the radar signings, 3-year deal, a guy that can, has really been a leader on that defense, something that you have to have. I would say what you're saying, Freer, I think it's going to be mainly on the defense you see a lot of building, unless there are some really talented wide receivers that could slip into the second and third round because this is a heavy wide receiver class.
Right.
And that may push even more Curtis Samuel, and it allows you to have some true weapons on the offensive side. Pharaoh Cooper is coming. He's also assigned for the return game. So I think we're going to see a lot on the defense. Hey, guys, one other thing, too, I just thought about. This defensive line is going to be totally changed. Bruce Irvin, Mario Addison, Vernon Butler, Gerald McCoy, and Dontari Poe are all gone. So D-line has to be – that's why I think that's going to be a real hard look in a hardcore place where we see.
Luke Kuechly.
Yeah, Luke Kuechly gone at the linebacker. Yeah, so you bring up a really good point. It's a lot of uncertainty in how they're going to go. But if there is a quarterback that slides, which we've seen over the years, and with Tua not having the health that he's had and being injured, I could see something like that. It wouldn't shock me. I'll just say that. Especially with this culture so much of being about competition, and whoever the best guy at that position wins. Tua clearly can be a guy in a system like that. He's been trained, and that's the kind of quarterback he is. So I wouldn't be shocked if he were to slip and have to really slip down in the draft. If he were to be there, I could see the Panthers making a move like that.
What are your final thoughts, guys, here on the Panthers as we do try to look into the future? I mean, you said it with OTAs, and I could see the season being delayed maybe into mid-September or something, just to try and give these teams a little bit longer. But we'll start with you, Buck. Just tell me your final thoughts on where you think the Panthers are right now.
Yeah, I think, like I said, their defense has to be rebuilt, especially on the defensive line, and with Lou Kuechly gone. I also think that being a new staff, you don't have those chances to work with these guys. They're doing a lot of Zoom video. These coaches are becoming proficient in these kind of video conferences so they can learn and teach these guys their offense. Those guys can do it working out on their own, but doing that. So I think the OTAs are going to be critical because you're not going to have as much time. Even if it's pushed back to May, or hopefully it's not May, but if it is May, you think about the timeline. There's already, after the draft, usually you have something right away. So I think with a new staff, you're going to have to really implement and install quickly and get up to speed as quick as possible. I think with this offense, it's designed to be able to throw the ball around, and they're going to have to score in this division now. You've got Brady, you've got Ryan, and I mean, and Breeze. You're going to have a bunch of teams that are going to play you at least twice a year that can score points. You're going to have to put up points as well.
Yeah.
I think this is a new coaching staff in transition. This is basically an ownership. You're still transitioning into that ownership. I think this is a season, assuming the season's played, when you throw in everything, the delays that are, to me, inevitable. I think this is, I don't want to say it's a throwaway season, but this is going to be a season of transition for this team. And I agree with Buck. They've got to really, really score. Do they have the players to put up points? I mean, that'll be, to me, question number one with this franchise. And, you know, as much as I'd like to see Panthers winning, I got to wonder if this is just, I would say, like I said, I don't want to say it's a throwaway season, but, yeah, you get one honeymoon season, I guess, if you're a new staff and new regime, and this might be the one to get them ready for the next, the next part of this franchise.
Well, I agree, guys, and I think, I think when you talk about where this defense is right now and all the unknowns with the defense, as you guys said, you're going to have to score. I don't know if the Panthers are going to be able to score with, you look at the Saints, you look at the potential that Atlanta's got, and then who knows with Tampa Bay. So you almost sit there and say, maybe the Panthers will be, if they can get 8-8 in the first year with this new system and new group of coaches, then maybe they're doing good. But we appreciate both of you guys joining us, Buck and Mike. I know it's an odd situation for all you folks watching at home, and we really appreciate you watching and joining us. Continue to social distance, and we'll continue to do it here on ADSN. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you back here real soon. And if not, seeing you all together here real soon, because it's going to be nice whenever we actually get to see somebody other than the people that live in our neighborhoods.
That's right.
Stay safe, everybody.
All right, take care. Hey, make sure you wash your hands at least 20 seconds. Don't slack off of that.
That's right.
In your hands will rest the final success of failure of our sport. The energy, the faith, the devotion, and the glow from from that fire can truly light the world. Together, let us explore the stars. United, there is little we cannot do. So let us begin anew, symbolizing an end as well as change. The command of Isaiah to undo the heavy burden and let the oppressed go free.